Hello everyone, and welcome to Module 5, Lesson 5, Subtracting Integers. I hope that you all find this lesson somewhat easy, because I hope what you're about to realize is that this really isn't that much new stuff. And I think that you guys have kind of been picking up on that already. But before we get into subtracting integers, let's review what we learned in class about adding integers. Just real quick, you do not have to write. I'll write that up here. So do not write this. You already have this in your notes. So if you need this, you can look back a couple pages. So same signs, add and keep. That's part of the song that we learned in class. Same signs, add and keep just means if it's the same sign, we add the absolute values, so 2 plus 3 is 5, and we keep the sign, they're both negative, so it's -5. The second part of our song says, different signs subtract, keep the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. Remember, we subtract the absolute values. So remember, the absolute value of 10 would be 10. The absolute value of -12 would be 12. We find the difference between these two. 12 minus 10 is 2. And then we keep the sign of the larger number. Remember, I told you that's really the larger absolute value, which would be 12. So we're going to keep the little negative sign that it has, and our answer would be -2. If you need more review on this, stay for tutoring, come to my room during lunch, because you need to understand adding integers before you can understand subtracting integers. Again, you don't have to write this slide, but let's think back a little bit to this example problem. I think I gave it to you all for a warm-up one day. And it says, your grandmother gave you $10 for your birthday, and the next day you spent $4 on snacks. How much do you have left? If you remember, I told you all to write an addition sentence. I said, do not use subtraction. And so in class, we all wrote the addition sentence, 10 plus -4, and then we decided that equaled 6, because we subtracted the absolute values. 10 minus 4 gave us 6. 10 has the larger absolute value. We kept that positive sign. And we kept this. And I had a lot of you say, Miss Naylor, but wait, that's just 10 minus 4. And you kept telling me that. And you would say, but we still get the same answer, Miss Naylor. We still get 6. And if you remember, I told you to just hang with me. We'd get to subtraction eventually. And we'd learn what relates addition of integers to subtraction of integers. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you exactly how we get from subtraction to addition. But I just wanted to point out that these two sentences, 10 plus -4 equals 6, and 10 minus 4 equals 6, give us the same value. So think for a minute. Why do you think that is? How is adding a negative number the same as just subtracting a positive number? So if you look at subtracting integers, this slide you do have to write. Go ahead and write your title, Subtracting Integers, and write this bullet point. Subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. There's actually a lot of mathematicians who will say that subtraction is a lie. All that subtraction really is adding a negative number. We use subtraction because honestly it's faster to write. It's faster to write, if you look at my first example, 7 minus 5, than it is to write 7 plus -5. And we also think with subtraction. We think if I have $10 and I spend 4, that's subtracting $4, not adding -$4. So for subtracting integers, all we do is add the opposite. So please write the examples. Our first example, number 1, we have 7 minus 5. Now, we all know that that's 2. But let me show you what we can do. We add, so we change the subtraction sign to an addition sign. But we can't change that one without adding the opposite. So subtraction changes to addition, the positive number goes to a negative number, and we still have the answer of 2. Think about our integer rules. We find the absolute value of both of them. We subtract it. So we keep 2, and we keep the sign of the larger number. All we're doing is continuing to use our integer rules, but by adding the opposite. Another way that people call this, I'm going to write this up here. You can write it down if you want, which is keep, change, change. And what that means, and some people like to remember it this way, some people would rather call it adding the opposite. But keep, change, change would just say keep the sign of your first number, change the subtraction sign to addition, change the positive sign to a negative sign. Again, it's the same as adding the opposite. If I subtract the absolute values, I get 4. I keep the sign of my larger absolute value, which is a negative sign. So my answer here is -4. Again, the only new thing that we are doing is adding the opposite. I do have one more example, example 3. And this is what to do if we have 2 negative signs. Again, write it down. And we have 3 minus -8. And remember, those parentheses are just there because this right here might look confusing. That's the only reason. We just put parentheses there to separate these 2 negative signs. But we can forget about this for a minute. So let's look up at our example. If I do adding the opposite or keep, change, change, however you like to think about it, 3 plus +8. I did keep, change, change, or I did adding the opposite. And 3 plus 8 is 11. Easy enough? Now do your 3 try it problems. Click pause and give these a try. All right, I hope you got all these right and that you're actually trying them and clicking pause. But let's go ahead and go over these answers. Number 1, we have 3 minus 4. So we can add, we can add the opposite, 3 plus -4. Use those integer rules and tells us that that answer is -1. Number 2, we have 5 minus -9. Adding the opposite or keep, change, change. We change both of these. And 5 plus 9 will give us 14. Last one, we have 11 minus -8. Keep, change, change. 11 plus 8 is 19. If you like to think keep, change, change, you can underline. Or if you like to think adding the opposite, you can do that too, however you like to think about it. If you need more help with subtracting integers or adding integers, any of these rules, any more practice, please ask me. Remember, we have math tutoring every Monday and Tuesday after school. And if you ever need additional help, my room is always open during lunch, during second lunch. So have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will see you all tomorrow.